Oh yeah, we're not blasting tonight. We're gonna take a little chill tonight. Gonna enjoy a nice life detector out there, and we're just gonna smooth it out with DJ Technoid on the YZ1000. What's going on, everybody? Michael here. Welcome back to another live episode of the Technoid Show. Tonight, guys, is part 2, a continuation of our last episode that we did. If you guys have not seen part 1, I encourage you guys to please, after this live is done, go back, watch part 1, because the final part, the conclusion of this live episode trilogy, the last episode of Technoid for 2022, will be dropping on Friday night at 9 p.m. We will wrap it up. We will be bringing some more guests. We got some big guests. We got little guests. We got every guest coming on. But of course, tonight we are joined by the 2 main stars of tonight's show, returning to get his hot takes from the CLE, a place from where, quote, champions are made. I am, of course, talking about the one and only S&T, Need Mobile Tech. What's up, man?
It's the home of the blizzard conditions, man. Seriously. It's ice cold over
Cincinnati
here.
Bengals are your only hope. The
Oh,
Cincinnati
the Browns
Bengals
suck.
are your only hope. But also, tonight, we have a returning guest after 2 months. 2 months of long-awaited. Ooh, before we go any further, Front Page Tech, I've been looking for you. What is up, John? Reach out to me if you can on Discord. I have been trying to get a hold of you. I need to talk to you in private, my friend. I know you got rid of Twitter, so find me on Discord. My name is Technoid on your Discord. I got to talk to you in private, Big John. I got something special planned for you, but I need to get your approval first, so hit me up on Discord. But anyway, sorry about that. But of course, a show is not a show without the returning man who is known for his beanies, who is known for his tees, who is known for everything you can imagine. And now, 2 months later, 2 months, he is back. I am, of course, talking about the one and only Dennis. What's up, Dennis?
Not much, Technoid. It's great to be back on your show. Honestly, every time I come on, it's incredible to see how much you've involved it. Like the intro, the holiday intro, absolutely fantastic. Loving the background and obviously loving the topics that you're picking tonight. And we have a great panel here with a legend in the community, Sneed, and the up-and-coming heavyweight himself, Mr. Technoid, here when it comes to specifically talking about physical tech. So I know it'll be a nice show.
Well, we can't get too much because I am looking like a heavyweight. I've put on 10 pounds of body fat. I'm going to have to slide it out for this bulking season. So I'm in Francis Ngannou territory, so we got to watch out. But anyway, before we get going, we got to get down real quickly. As you guys know, want you to subscribe to Sneed Mobile Tech. Subscribe to Dennis, who will be soon launching his own YouTube channel. We will get the links. We will get everything set up once he gets his stuff going. We will make sure to update everything in the description. Also, guys, follow me on Twitter at Technoid12. Also, real quickly, shout out to Slate Chocolate Milk for providing and being a continued partner of the Technoid Show. Make sure that you, and I say this very, very kindly, make sure you head on over, make sure you check out their selection. They've got some brand new flavors, French vanilla, vanilla latte, and let me tell you guys, it's delicious stuff. Make sure to head on over, use promo code Technoid, save 10% off, and also get yourself some Rogue Energy. I'm drinking it right now. As you know, every episode, we got to load up on the Rogue. They just launched a brand new hydration formula, so if you don't want the caffeine, but you want the delicious flavor, they got some new hydration formulas. Head on over, Technoid, for 10% off. And thank you, Front Page Tech. We will get down to business after the end of the show. We appreciate you. But anyway, let's get down to business. Let's break it down tonight. So, last video, when me and Sneed, we did a video talking about tech going into 2023. Now, part one, we talked about the good. We recapped. We did everything. Now, Dennis, you were not there for the last episode. So I want to give you a chance while we start setting up everything. Once we start pulling up some things, I want to give you a chance because I know you've probably got some things you want to say, and I love to hear what you had thoughts on this whole year with the tech world, with Samsung, Google, Apple. What was your thoughts? What were some positives? And most importantly, what were some things that maybe shocked you? And it doesn't have to just be the three companies we named. It could be anything else. It could be cellular. It could be phones. It could be, hell, it could be solar panels for all we care. What impressed you? What impressed you?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that happened this year. As far as good goes, I'm really happy with Samsung in particular for going back to their roots a little bit with the S lineup this year with the S22s. Awesome to see the S22 Ultra specifically come out in that lineup because I'm a big Note fan. So I was a big fan of Samsung's flagship phones this year, as well as the commitments they made when it comes to software updates and the timing of the software updates. They were actually beating Google, in fact, on some of those updates. So that was really cool to see Samsung addressing that. Also, I know that not everyone will agree with me, but I was actually kind of happy to see Apple go all in on eSIM for the United States because I feel like that is the future. Once it has been supported by all the carriers, it is going to be more easier and more convenient than physical SIM ever was. So I was actually kind of happy to see Apple go all in on that because they're the type of company that truly sets the tone for the rest of the industry. As far as connectivity goes, one other thing that I was happy to see this year is a refocusing on broadband by all of telecom. So that's the fixed wireless companies providing competition in the space as far as like a price competition is concerned, and then big cable taking it to fixed wireless and fiber as far as performance goes to become more competitive in the market. I believe that everybody needs access to fast, reliable internet, and cable is something that most people in America are going to probably have access to. And then there's obviously the lucky few that get to enjoy fiber who are now getting to see multi-gig speeds become a normal thing for residential consumers at fairly reasonable prices for what it is. So those are the goods. And then as far as shocking goes, Steed, I'm sorry, but I was kind of let down by the Pixel yet again. I don't think it was really a great piece of hardware. We didn't really get to see anything gained as far as raw performance goes, as far as like the tensor SoC, and it also still had one of the weakest wireless modems out of phone devices, which to me and what we do in our space is kind of important. So a little bit disappointed by the second generation of Pixel and their own SoC.
All right. That's a good start for our show because we do have to talk about the negatives. But I actually am very interested in your takes. You actually bring up a lot of fair things and some things we actually overlooked. Even as tech YouTubers like myself who focus, like you said, on the hardware, sometimes those little things slip through the cracks. So I really appreciate you bringing those things to the spotlight. That's why I always like bringing multiple people on the show. We get multiple perspectives. We get multiple different areas so we don't miss as much as we can. So appreciate that. But tonight, as you started the segue, we're going to focus on the negatives. So we already did the positives. Now it's time to get to the negatives. And I want to start this off because the last show, I got a little bit of heat from the OnePlus community. They were upset. They were upset that I went in on OnePlus.
Can we name an episode of anything on Technoid where a OnePlus fan doesn't go off on you about?
Can
something?
we name an actual OnePlus owner who actually owns it in the United States?
There's like 15, and then they all come to his comment section. Bro.
Now listen. I don't want to start the show off negative. I want to have some fun, but listen, there's no sugarcoating crap. You can put a cherry on top of a turd sandwich. It's still a turd. And listen, I'm not saying
son.
OnePlus is bad. I just said that I felt that OnePlus, while they made a move to try to bring them back to formula, I just felt that it was not a good move. I felt like it didn't do anything, and I felt like it just didn't add anything because they're still exactly where they are. They haven't gone up. They haven't gone down. They did have that big merger with Oppo in terms of the software, but that's about it.
But let's put it all on the table. The North America, what OnePlus phones sell here? They're mid-range phones and entry-level phones.
Yeah. Nords.
The flagships don't move here. Like, we don't even see them in carrier stores anymore.
And that's why I want to do again what I did the last episode, because this is me coming back at OnePlus fans. If you think I'm gonna stop talking about OnePlus, I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say, and you're either gonna sit there, shut your mouths, and listen, or better yet, you can just click off the video, leave your dislike, and bye bye.
Okay, so Mike, we can all respect the hardware. Like,
Yeah.
I know it's a flagship, and I know it's a good hardware device. But it's hard to get behind something that isn't fully supported on our continent.
Yeah, and that's why I want to pull this up, because just yesterday, as we were talking, the teaser for the OnePlus 11 came out. Now,
Look
of
at
course,
that camera bump, dude.
in
Holy
Europe,
hell.
I'm gonna pull up the Chinese dubbed presentation, but this is their first sneak peek at the OnePlus 11. And let me tell you guys something. You know for a fact, for starters, they're messing up already out the gate. They ain't even in 2023 and they're messing up. You want to know how? Take a look at this zoom. Look at this font. Like, look at the inconsistencies. You want to talk about starting off the year with a bang? Well, how about you maybe check your website? It's literally Times New Roman, and the whole other website is just like, oh yeah. And look, they didn't even think to fix the. Oh man, I'm sorry. That's just nitpicking me. So let me digress. Let me take it back. So the real thing I wanted to say was, yes, they said we're making the OnePlus 11 5G and then the OnePlus 11 Pro 5G. We know that they're making two models of the phone. We have been hearing about it for a while. The spec wise, you obviously know it's going to be the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. We don't need to really leak it because it's pretty much already been confirmed. We do know that the alert slider is back because they got bombarded with negativity on that. Literally, I was at the OnePlus 10T launch event, and there was some weird dude sitting right next to me that screamed out, "Where's the slider?" or "Where's the alert slider?" You could hear it in the live stream. That dude was weird. But I'm just gonna go on record and say, look, I know OnePlus is trying to change. They're saying they're listening. They're saying they care. And I've met the people behind the US team. I actually had a chance to talk to them one-on-one. I talked to the European guys. I talked to the American guys. They are actually some really nice people. And I don't want to discredit the ambitions, and I don't want to discredit the hard work that they're trying to do. But you know, you can only use that terminology, "we listen to the fans," up to so much extent. And I feel like the biggest thing they're not listening is what you guys are saying. The guys who know the cellular end, the guys who knows what makes a smartphone. So if they really want to listen, if they really want to up their game, they need to start getting input from people like you, Dennis, people like you, Sneed. They don't need my input. I'm just a tech YouTuber. I just cover the news. I just talk about what I think. But people like you that know the cellular end, that know that, because I was talking to these people and I can vouch it if I go back and see them again. They want this kind of feedback. So they should be interacting with people that know the whole modem end set, the networking end. So that's where I feel like they should be focusing on, in my opinion, because while they do have more carrier support, I still don't see it in AT&T. Verizon is still very selective. T-Mobile seems to be their number one, but I just wanted to start the show off by saying, look, the biggest negative with OnePlus is they're doing the same thing. They're not doing anything any different. I don't see them doing anything different. And we'll talk about what they can do later on in the show. But go ahead, guys. Floor is yours.
So, as much as I'd like to see them actually get up to snuff when it comes to band support and wireless support in the U.S., I don't think that's actually OnePlus's biggest problem. I think OnePlus's biggest problem is just that their pricing, like their claim to fame was a flagship killing phone at a not flagship price. That space got competitive. And unlike the other companies like Samsung in particular, OnePlus doesn't get subsidies. Or if they do, it makes it so that it's not like even a real fair battle because everyone's going to pick the Samsung phone if the Samsung's phone is free and you're in the Android space, right? So what OnePlus needs to really do, aside from addressing some of the hardware concerns, to be able to be used on AT&T and Verizon, is they have to work out a way to get the cost down to what the end consumer pays. Whether that be them doing their own financing, getting clever with some type of dealership deal. Maybe they work in a deal where they're sold in Best Buys all across the country or something, or what. They need to be available and cheap for flagship phones. But I don't think there's going back. Like, I don't think there's much going back here. Like, no one knows the OnePlus name. The people that do tend to have a somewhat negative viewpoint on it because they've kind of changed from what they were. And I don't really think there's much salvaging them here in the U.S. at least.
I'm just going to say this real quickly. Because I want Sneak to respond. You know it's bad when Carl Pai's Nothing phone has more attraction than the newest OnePlus with the latest and greatest. And the Nothing phone is running on like mid-range stuff. So and I'm telling you, they're every time they go in stock, they're selling out. The Nothing phones are selling out. I genuinely tried to pick up a Nothing phone 1, couldn't get it. They're just selling out. I don't know how much they have in stock. I don't know if it's because people are hyped up. I don't know, maybe they're delaying the launch or whatever. But every time I get a notification that they got a model ready, as soon as I go in and try to get it, gone. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
It's because the end consumer doesn't care about the hardware. As long as it works good enough and it works on their carrier, they're happy. So OnePlus has the issue of they only work on T-Mobile. That's the only carrier that they actually fully work on. And they have really bad availability. And T-Mobile doesn't offer any specific promos for the flagship phones. It's only the low-end stuff, specifically on Metro PCS, that OnePlus is seeing success. So it's availability and pricing.
Go ahead, Sneed.
All right, man. So they got some strikes against them. You know, like they're not really fully supported in all carrier stores. In the U.S., you got to sell in carrier stores. That's got to be a channel that you can capitalize on. When people go into a carrier store and they trade in their old phones, oftentimes they just replace their old phone with a new version of the same one. So if they have an iPhone, which is, 60% of the upgrades, if not more, 70% of the upgrades, they're going with an iPhone, and the remaining 30% or so of the market share, a majority of that is going to a Galaxy. Whether it's a S22 or the Ultra version of that, or maybe a mid-range Galaxy of some sort. And then, you know, you're picking your little spots with pixels here and there, but like that's a market share issue. Dennis talked about pricing. The claim to fame for the OnePlus was always you're going to get this flagship experience on a mid-range price. Well, they don't do that anymore. Now their phones are priced akin to a lot of flagships. In fact, it's probably most closely priced to what, a Pixel?
It's
right? Like a Pixel Pro.
Samsung Galaxy S22 base.
So now they're coming up to $800-900. So how's that a flagship killer? People still, when they think of OnePlus, they remember those years. Yeah, they remember those years.
The only thing, the 10T, just real quickly, this was actually the cheapest one they released, $599. When it came out, it was $649, but then they quickly dropped the price to $599.
Okay, so that puts it right in line with the Google Pixel 7.
Yeah, so
right, coming in at $599 or whatever. Yeah,
I don't want no 20% off any accessory coupons. Get out of here with that.
Yeah,
but
as long as people are going into a carrier store and upgrading that way, OnePlus is at a disadvantage. And the second part is, even if they do carry it, right? Let's say it's at a T-Mobile store like Dennis was saying. People are like, this phone's going to be worth nothing when I'm done with it in 2 or 3 years. An iPhone still has some value, and a Galaxy has a little bit of value. At least when they trade the phones back in, they'll get something. What is OnePlus's trade in?
Get nothing. You want to see?
Nothing.
I'll pull it up right now.
Also, let's emphasize real quick. $599, right? They brought it down to a Pixel price, right? But Sneed, do you know what the difference?
Here's your value.
But Sneed, do you know what the difference is between the Pixel and this OnePlus 10T at the same price point on paper? The Pixel gets the carrier deal and brings it down to 0. Best Buy gives the deals to bring it down to less. Pixel gets additional deals even if you don't even go through the carrier for trade-ins, where basically Google makes the phone free. This phone is $599 regardless of, or at best, still in the 300s, even with like the best trade-in.
Yeah. And you just saw on your screen, if anybody that paid full price for a OnePlus, oh god, I don't even want to look at the numbers. But here you go.
Like if I have a
10T.
OnePlus 6T right now, what's that worth on a trade-in?
$10.
$10. So a 3-year-old phone or a 4-year-old phone, right? If I traded in an iPhone, I'd still get $150, $200 if I traded in an iPhone 10.
Let's see.
And that's
Look
before
at the
that's before
difference.
carrier
Look
deals.
at the difference.
Oh, a carrier
Look-
deal, they're gonna give me like what,
1,000.
400?
No, 1,000.
Yeah,
They'll
they
give
give you
you-
more.
I don't think they will.
Dude, not this most recent round of deals, but the deals before this, AT&T was giving $1,000 all the way back to like the iPhone 8.
Yeah, I don't know if they're still doing it, but yeah, I mean, if they were, yeah, it'd be 1,000.
I can't.
I just
look at
don't know if
these
they're still
numbers.
doing the 10. Well, maybe,
And
maybe
the
the 10.
iPhone and the iPhone 8's like 4 or 5.
I can't even look
crazy,
at those
bro.
numbers anymore. I was about to have a heart attack.
Samsung
But
is
I'm-
doing what back to the S10, right?
Well,
They'll give you
AT&T, if you remember, was doing $800 all the way back to the Galaxy S6.
Whew.
So what I'm getting at here is like 3 years, okay, is the typical upgrade pattern for the average American at this point. They upgrade their phones every 3 years. So if you're only giving $10 for a 3-year-old phone that is of your own company, then of course they're gonna go with something else, where they're gonna go with like the deal for the Samsung trade-in at the carrier.
And how do you as a salesman at one of these carrier stores say, "Hey, look, I know you like your Galaxy or I know you like your iPhone, but let me show you the OnePlus." People are going to be like, "What the hell is that?"
Well, first you have to pay marketing to convince the salesperson to even know what OnePlus is and why they should sell it. And then you have to convince the carriers to actually have a commission structure to incentivize selling the OnePlus phone. Because I guarantee you, with everything holy, that there's probably a kickback of some kind, probably like a spiff, that the salespeople at like AT&T or T-Mobile retail stores, not the corporate ones, the third party ones, I guarantee they get like a spiff for selling every Samsung phone, for example, from Samsung.
Sure. Yeah.
I'll tell you, man, third-party MVNOs, they're doing good with the Nord series because a lot of people actually go for the Nord series, but
Pricing.
it's a shame.
It's the
It's a
pricing.
shame because you would think of all phones from OnePlus, the Nord is actually outperforming. And it's actually gotten them a bit of market share. So much
But Mike,
market share.
it's a simple calculus. It's a simple calculus. Nobody wants to pay $700, $800, $900, $1,000 for a OnePlus. They will pay $300. They will pay $200. They will not pay $1,000 or $800. They just won't.
They don't want it.
Well, wait.
They don't know the brand strong enough.
Well, wait, there's something else to touch on here, Sneed, and it goes back to the whole price calculation. On the postpaid side, financing is an option. So even if it is $1,000, it's not really to the end consumer, right? It's more about at that point, what phone is the best, period. What phone is going to last me the longest, period. If you're Android, it's Samsung. They promise the longest amount of update support and have had a pretty good reputation at this point. And if it's Apple, well, your iPhone. Prepaid, different. Prepaid doesn't have financing. So it is about the price. You don't see free phones typically on prepaid, and if they are the Nord. The Nord is the one that gets the free phone deal from Metro. Never the Samsung phone. Or very rarely the Samsung phone. So that's the reason why the Nord sees success, because it gets discounted to free in the prepaid space.
Makes a fair point. I can't argue that. But anyway, we'll circle back to OnePlus when in the final video. We'll talk about what they can do better, but will it matter? Probably not. But let's get to the main stars of the show, the big three.
Can I give
of
you
course,
my fail for 2022?
Your fail?
The biggest tech fail of 2022?
What brand are we going with?
Google Stadia.
Ooh.
Google Stadia is through. It's over. They're issuing refunds. They shut that shit down. It is over, dog. Welcome to the freaking Google graveyard, dog. Like with the rest of the shit that's dead there.
I mean, I called it back whenever who was it? Help me out here. He's the Uber driver. He's always on the He's always on your Twitter Spaces. Come on, Keon. When
Keon,
Keon,
Keon.
when Keon used to talk about how, oh yeah, this is gonna replace gaming PCs, yada yada yada. No, I called it. I was like, internet
Yeah,
infrastructure
nah,
ain't there.
Keon. Listen, I know Keon since way back before. I think like big, heavy magenta thong lover. And let me just say, he is a passionate man, and I say that without being joking. I'm being honest. He's very passionate. But that was one argument. He could argue about T-Mobile, whatever. Fine, I'll give him that. But you couldn't argue this one because we knew, and it was a shame because I wasn't even thinking Stadia. I was thinking something else. But it's interesting that you bring that up because Stadia, truthfully, there was really no way around it. It was just a fail because, for starters, the games that you were supposed to play on there, they couldn't get any licenses to get NBA for free, Call of Duty, all of the big names, especially the fact that they were also then trying to bring original games or whatever. Nobody wanted to develop for Stadia. Nobody wanted to do anything. They just wanted to have a hub. Now, they did get some games in on the market, but they could never achieve NBA level games. They could never get Call of Duty level games. And at the end of the day, man, even listen, I remember when it was announced, I said to me, I thought there was potential. I never said it was going to be a success. I said, and I could pull it back, I said there's huge potential here if Google does it right. But in Google typical fashion, it's now in the graveyard. And I had no idea they were giving refunds, so yikes.
10
You know,
years. 10
you know
years is when it. I was just gonna say 10 years. 10 years is when this idea actually takes off. Google was too soon, similar to other companies that got in too soon, like how Facebook's trying to get in the metaverse right now. 10 years too soon. Go ahead,
I
Steen.
think I
That's
think
a
the
fair
bigger
point.
problem. I think the bigger problem is that you didn't have devices. You needed gaming devices. You needed a gaming phone with gaming hardware, a gaming GPU, a gaming CPU, active, heat dissipation.
No, Sneed.
Can I
No.
finish? Can
Oh,
I
sorry,
finish?
go.
You need a gaming tablet, right? You needed to give them hardware that would take advantage of gaming, like larger display, like louder speakers, immersive experience, and then allow the cloud services to shine, right? With all the titles and all of that. And then again, develop online gaming titles. There was so many gaps in the offer, nobody was compelled to even try it, right? So it was like an incomplete catalog. You didn't have really special hardware that was going to be like a awesome gaming experience with it. And to be honest with you, man, like, are the networks really equipped to be doing online gaming like through the cloud? Like, our latencies are still the same as they were 2 years ago. They're still the best case scenario in the teens, right? Best case scenario, you got a good 5G connection. You might be getting 15 milliseconds or something like that. So like, I don't even know how the servers were performing. I have no idea. Nobody ever really gave any feedback. I don't remember. But
Did they
all in
even
all,
report the server numbers? Did they ever talk about it?
I
Like
don't
I don't
know.
remember. I don't even remember them following up.
I
I
remember
actually
somebody doing like a highlight review using it on AT&T's 5G network, and he said it was okay. He's like, it wasn't great, it wasn't bad. Sometimes the latencies were good and sometimes they were bad, because that's the state of the 5G networks today. Some places they're good and some places they're bad. So your experience isn't even uniform.
So Sneed, real quick, when you were talking about gaming hardware, the whole point of Stadia was so that you're able to game on literally anything. Like that, like if you need gaming hardware for it, then it defeats the whole pain point it's supposed to be addressing.
But how are you going to get people to adopt if they're not going to enjoy the service?
So it's a catch-22, right? People want to game on, say, their PC or their console or whatever, right? But the point was that you're not supposed to need the hardware. The point was that you're supposed to be able to like literally plug in like a Chromecast, like those $50 Chromecasts. Literally supposed to be able to plug that into your TV and just start gaming and just using. It's supposed to just basically stream like Netflix. That was the point of Stadia, or the point of any of these streaming platforms. So if it doesn't do that, then it already is missing the point of what they were trying to target. Now, I will say, I do partially agree with you. Stadia should, as part of getting like the subscription, should have sent out a controller of some kind that is usable with iOS and Android. That way, people aren't just using random Xboxes and controllers or anything else and having some compatibility issues. And I believe they had a controller that you could buy as a separate
I think I've seen it.
addition,
Yeah.
but it should have been something that was included or very heavily discounted, I think, if you bought like
You know,
maybe like the year subscription.
okay, this is a stupid joke, but I'm gonna tell it anyway. If they really, really wanted to get, like if they really wanted to get more people into those, like, so okay, y'all remember way back? Ah, man, the joke is getting slipped here. Give me a second. Okay. Y'all remember back in the 2000s when they used to have like those TV video games where you basically just plug it into your TV. There's like a bunch of wires.
Yeah, it used the red, yellow, and
Yeah, I was really about to say all I gotta do is just release something like this with the red, yellow wires, and then there you go, universal support right there, Google Stadia right through the controller.
well, here's the thing. Even if they did that, going back to what I said about 10 years and what Steve's point was, the bigger problem from Stadia is that for Stadia to work, it is heavily dependent on a reliable, low latency broadband connection from the end user. And what are the few things that we know about end users and their connectivity? Number one is that most people connect their devices via Wi-Fi or wireless, which inherently are going to have issues when it comes to the stability of the ping, which is the most important thing for something like this. Number two that we know is that most people in the United States only have a reliable internet connection if they're at home, which if they're at home, they probably already have a console or something else that they'd rather play on.
PC, console, something that's dedicated hardware.
So if they want to be on the go, the options for gamers in that space are basically the Nintendo Switch, which, ironically enough, would probably be the most ideal device for Stadia to be on. And the reason why I say this, but it would never happen, but the reason why I say this is because, in theory, you could play your Nintendo exclusive games and games optimized for Switch, but then like the super big AAA titles like your Call of Duty that you mentioned, Technoid, that's where Stadia could come in because you're never going to fit powerful enough hardware to run the latest version of Call of Duty on your Nintendo Switch, but it has already the screen and the controls that are going to lead to a good experience. But again, the crux here is that mobile wireless networks in the United States were not designed with literally real-time gaming in mind. I think Stadia requires something like, quote, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it like 50 megabits per second they ask for reliably just as your download?
Yeah, minimally they needed 50 down, yeah. Because when you're playing in a COD lobby and if it's cross-platform, because now that they've got PC, Xbox servers, PlayStation being able to cross compatibility, that's going to take another toll because you got to also match up their servers along with what's going on the PC end. That's one of the things they started doing now with PlayStations. They just released an update for PlayStation and servers. If you're playing on, you can now separate. So if you don't want to do cross compatibility, you want a smoother experience server-wise, you can actually toggle off the cross compatibility, and that's something that Sony's been doing at least for the PlayStation end.
But going back to the bandwidth that Google was asking for here, 50 megabits per second, to put perspective on this, is twice the amount of bandwidth that's required for a 4K resolution video stream. And that was all.
You know what's crazy, Dennis? How many plans will give you 50 megabits to gaming?
That
like
was
Like Magenta doesn't. Verizon's entry level unlimited won't give you that. It'll be throttled.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to get at here. So 4K video streaming was already something that was customized specifically to the most premium plans or in niche circumstances like having to be connected to the C-band with Verizon. And then even going one step further, 4K video streaming only works on mobile because of some trickery that has to do with how UDP protocol works, i.e. you can set up a buffer, load it up into memory, right? So if the connection drops or is unstable, it doesn't immediately interrupt the video you're watching. Gaming, real-time gaming doesn't have that luxury. If there's an interruption in the connection because maybe you're just having a tower handoff, you straight up disconnect. You're out. You're gone.
Yeah. There's no arguing in that. And, well, hopefully we'll see, maybe like you said, maybe in the next 5-7 years, maybe like you said, who knows, maybe they'll bring it back. But I can tell you right now, there are some internal talks that they're looking to kind of make up for the loss with Google Stadia, and apparently their next concept is called plug and play, and I can release the first ever concept images of their soon to be next generation plug and play called Google Plug and Play. It's called the Video Game System 2000.
Look, 10
I'm
years from
sorry.
now, 10 years from now when
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
10 years from now when connections are actually ready for something like this, I'm going to bet you my bottom dollar that localized processing will also have come a significant way. I mean, just look at the incredible silicon Apple's been able to do with the M1 chips, right? Like, I guarantee you we'll probably get to the point where there won't even be the need, or even if there was the ability to do so, you would still have to convince developers to optimize for that level of structure, which is its own challenge. Just look at Microsoft when they tried to go in with the Windows Phone, right? It flopped because no developers wanted to develop for the App Store. It
Yeah.
was a good OS, in my opinion. It was a great OS,
It was
actually.
actually in a unique kind of phone at the time. I thought it was pretty unique. But like you said, nobody wanted to develop.
Yeah.
And
So,
speaking of Apple, that's actually the segue now to the negatives. And I want to throw my opinion in. I think the biggest negative for me this year with Apple, I'm going to focus on a product. I'm going to take it to a product. And I'm pretty sure you guys already know what I'm going to pick. I already said it on my show. I was so disappointed in that new iPad. I was so disappointed. And I wasn't disappointed because I expected it to be better. I was disappointed because the compromise that Apple chose was very lazy. But I'm also very disappointed because it actually has exactly what people wanted, the landscape design that they're going to be transitioning to. They do have the SIM cards tray still in the iPad, so they still have a physical SIM slot. But there was one thing that nobody talked about that I'm actually getting a little worried right now, because I'm going to be honest with you guys. A lot of people aren't talking about it. A lot of people aren't actually considering this. But, we talked about, Apple potentially going with USB C. We talked about all this. Then they release a USB C to Lightning adapter. And that scares me because a part of me is panicking that this might be the solution that Apple does if they don't do a USB C model iPhone. Now, we'll talk about that another time, but I felt, to me, that people did not think of this, or at least didn't acknowledge it. And that what disappointed me the most was the fact that it supports the first gen, but they use a USB-C adapter. Now, if you buy an Apple Pencil first gen, which why would you? It does come in the box. So I just wanted to throw that in because I was more disappointed at the fact of the shortcuts it took. And it's a shame because the new keyboard that actually got released alongside it is actually a good keyboard. It's a very good keyboard. It was redesigned like the ones made for the iPad Pro, but all in all, it was a bad release in my opinion. And I just wanted to highlight that real quickly because I felt like not a lot of people talked about this one little thing that could potentially change the whole USB C iPhone argument. But we could talk about that another time. But go ahead. Dennis, what was a disappointment for you from Apple this year? What was your negative?
um, I guess mm, I don't really have anything that, I mean, yeah, what you pointed out kind of sucks, I guess, but like, to be honest, I was pretty content with Apple for the most part this year. Um, I guess if I really had a nitpick, the Apple Watch just kind of sucked this year. I don't know what Apple was doing with the most premium Apple Watch.
The good one is the really, really, really expensive one.
Yeah, like I don't know what they were doing with that. That one, yeah, the really expensive one. That kind of sucks, to be honest. I mean, it would have been cool to have those features, but then again, I don't have a smartwatch. I was just thinking about maybe possibly considering the option for my old man, but not.
Would
at
you
that
drop
price point.
800
Yeah,
on the
no,
old man?
no.
For his, would this be his first smartwatch?
This would be his first smartwatch.
Yeah.
But Nah, I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty content with the iPhone 14s this year. They didn't change much, but they didn't have to. It was boring, but boring was fine. MacBooks, I was very content with. I especially love the new redesign for the proper like MacBook Air. Now that it has like the additional ports and stuff. M1's been cool. Processor's been cool. There hasn't really been anything to really get me that angry with Apple this year.
I got something.
Go ahead.
Ooh.
Supply chain, man. Apple really, really dropped the ball in supply chain.
That was every company.
Yeah, you
Nah,
can't really.
not
It
really.
was. I mean, okay. I'm gonna play
I'm gonna
devil's
tell.
advocate.
I'm gonna tell
Okay,
you
go
why
ahead. Go
though.
ahead. You go
I'm
ahead.
gonna tell you
You go
why I'm
ahead.
disappointed. Go back to March 2020, when basically the whole world was home, right, and nobody was doing anything, and production across the globe stopped. Have we not learned our lesson when it comes to the production of these devices in a place like China, right, where a majority of Apple's productivity is through Foxconn, with horrible COVID policy, right, terrible pandemic protocol? They just basically shut down cities, right? And I look, I care about people and all that. I'm a humanitarian just like anyone is. But if we're just talking about as a business, right, if we're just talking about supply and demand, Apple should have been pivoting since 2020. The preparations moving towards local, domestic, same continent, something of a response to get away from strictly depending on China. That's a huge mistake. That is a horrible omission from Apple. It's like, yeah, we know that it's probably bad to put all of our eggs into this basket, but it's the cheapest way for us to produce phones. Therefore, we don't give a damn. We're going to continue to deal with it. We're going to just try to control it as much as we can and just get through it. The problem is things aren't changing. They still do their zero policy, where if somebody tests positive, they shut down the whole facility and lock everybody down for freaking 2 months. So, like, that's not changing.
I
Right?
want to play devil's advocate.
Play
So
devil's advocate. I'm just saying, what's more with India, more domestically? Like, okay, so what's better? Your phone's costing you more to produce, or not having phones?
so let me play devil's advocate real quick. First, before I do though, I just want to say I agree. This is for all companies. I think diversification in the supply chain is a must. So I agree with you on that point. However, in the case of Apple in particular, I don't think Apple just doesn't move out of China because they don't want to move out of China per se. I think it's quite literally that like because they were such a big force with the amount of phones that they get like delivered and stuff like that, like Apple essentially has made like their own like mini city of factories where like the screens and the RAM and the skilled labor force to actually develop these like high end pieces of phone are all centered in that, and it's hard to export that, right? Like it's easy to export something like earpods, right? Because they're not that complicated of a piece of technology. You could probably export that to any country, right? But like an iPhone with like the specialized unique equipment that you need to actually put it all together, a little more challenging. But I do agree with you. It's disappointing. A company of Apple size, I wish, would have even longer before that started to diversify their production for these devices and their MacBooks and stuff like that to at least be on two sides of the hemisphere. Maybe you have one located in like say Mexico, for example, and that serves like the North American continent and maybe parts of South America, and then maybe you have like I don't know one that's located like you talked about India, right? India has a ton of untapped labor. Now they're not necessarily skilled labor force for this specific specialized task, but you can work on training them, and they would be a much better country to work with while still being geographically close to your Taiwans and other component
But
factors.
clearly, the reliance on one place over the last couple of years is still there. We don't see any relief in sight from
Well, they're
They
a
doing
have
huge
Vietnam.
company.
they did actually announce that they're going to have a U.S. plant. I think where was
They
it?
have to.
Arizona.
They
Was it
have
in
to.
Arizona? I don't know where they announced it, but Tim Cook. I think they made a deal agreement to I forgot who it was, but I saw it and it was I think it was Arizona, and I think that they were going to focus their attention on you know coming in from the United States at least to meet with the demand. and it's mostly the CPU chips. It's mostly those components because displays and other things, those seem to be, for the most part, those seem to be fine. At least that's what reports are saying. But yeah, no, I'm kind of with Dennis on this one. I was listening, and while I agree with you, Sneed, I do think Apple needs to kind of stop relying on China. It's not so easy because if you look at the mass plant that they have at Foxconn. Now we know how bad Foxconn is. I can pull up videos, I can pull up images, things of the protest, the things that they do, and it's inhumane. Like even for me. But that's what Apple has done. They gotta, like you said, they're now starting to find new resources, new locations,
Well, here's
so
what I'm
that way they
thinking,
can.
Mike. How about 10%? A 10% reduction in reliance on Foxconn. Like just try to disperse that 10% elsewhere, anywhere else. And then with goals to ramp up to 20% within a couple of years. Like that those are small goals, but it's meaningful. Like cuz
Well,
you can't control what they do there. I mean, they built a little city where they produce them. Well, how much is that helping them right now? That they
Well,
built this little city.
well, Steve, they're already actually at 20%. Believe it or not, they've already moved 20% of production for iPhones to Vietnam in particular, and they're targeting to get it down to like 50% by like
Okay.
2025 or
See, I
something.
I think that's the move. I think that's what
But
they have to do.
but but the problem here is they're moving the location of where it's produced, but they haven't changed who's actually owning the companies that are producing. It's still 100% reliance on China. It's just the Chinese companies moved it down to a different country.
Yeah, so
So
they
it's
can
not
continue
solving
to
the root
operate
problem.
without a zero COVID policy.
But it's still not solving the root of the problem. You're still relying on China and their policies. If the CCP gets angry and says, F you, insert Chinese company that makes this thing, Apple's still screwed, right?
yeah.
Wait, if the operations are in Vietnam, then they have no impact on that policy.
They do, though, because the Chinese company that owns the manufacturing of insert X component.
They don't have a zero COVID policy in Vietnam.
You're not understanding me. Like, Sneed, say, I'm just going to use an example. I'm not saying this is the exact component, but I'm just using this as an example. Sneed, say you make the screens for my phone, okay? You are headquartered in China. I was originally doing business in China, and I'm gonna go move my production now for these screens for my phone down to Vietnam to diversify my supply in case something happens in China, right? And Vietnam doesn't have the same restrictions, right? The problem is though, is now Xi Jinping knocks to your door and says, Apple pissed us off, or the United States pissed us off. You're not allowed to do business anymore with Dennis's phone production.
Oh, so
Even though you have
you're talking about the company itself. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
the
even
company.
so even though it's outside of China, it's still in China's. It's literally still 100% in China's egg basket because you're depending on the whims of Xi Jinping and his party.
Well, can't argue with that one. But we'll see. We'll see maybe by
Oh,
2020. What was
uh,
it, 2025?
one more thing. The modems are not ready. The Intel
Ooh.
5G modems are not ready. So that's a
Oh,
disappointment too.
yeah.
Yeah, we don't even
Yeah.
have a roadmap as to when they're going to happen. Who's the guy that you follow closely on this stuff, Mike? Is it Min Chi Kuo?
Ming Chi Kuo.
Yeah, like
And
when is
also if he's watching, John Prosser.
okay, so we're gonna have to wait for either John or Kuo to come out with information about when those modems, the 5G modems, are gonna be ready from in-house
But I
because
don't
they're still
want
using
them.
Qualcomm.
I want
I wouldn't
Qualcomm.
want them. I want
I
them
know
to
you
keep
want
Qualcomm up
Qualcomm,
with
but
them.
at some point they're gonna pivot away from Qualcomm.
Yeah, and that's the day I'm gonna be sad and probably hold out on upgrading my iPhone for like 2 or 3 more years, man.
Yeah,
I
but they
already
might be able to become competitive and make a decent piece of hardware, and then it's like, oh well, this is actually as good as Qualcomm.
Okay, hold on. Time out. I pulled this up on the screen because this was another thing that I feel like Apple has a big negative. They still haven't got the crash detection, but I just want to bring this up real quickly. Apple's hardware sometimes is not a home run. It is not a home run. And I know for a
eSIM's not a
fact,
home run.
eSIM,
I don't know.
well, here's the
Dennis
thing.
is happy about it. I'm not.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I will say this. I remember the whole saga with Intel and Qualcomm
We got a
throttling the
super chat,
speeds.
Mike.
Hey, listen, it's these nuts.
These nuts. Good luck
Got
it
him.
out, these nuts.
Supporting. I appreciate. Thank you for the generous super chat. But I remember when the updates came out, they said they got throttling to match the performance of the Intel, and then they buy out the division. I'm not saying that they can't pull it off. They might, but do I want that? No, I really don't, because I don't want to take the risk. Now, I'm just saying, can they pull it off? Maybe. They have the resources, they do have the connections, they do have the deals in terms of, cellular, because whatever's going on with Hans Vestberg right now, but they're still very close with Verizon. They're somewhat with T-Mobile in some regard. I don't know about AT&T. I know they were the original owners of the iPhone, but they've got some connections. They could make it work, but I don't see an Apple in-house modem outperforming a Qualcomm X modem at least for a good maybe 5 years. Maybe.
Wow.
I'm
So
being generous.
it's not even about outperformance for me, Sneed. The problem for me, Sneed, is that network operators are always going to optimize or test their networks using the Galaxy, because the Galaxy is the first phone to come out with whatever the latest modem is whenever they want to test some band, right? So even if on
Yeah, but they
paper,
always use the year-old device. Like in 2022, they were using the S21. They're always 1 year as a reference device. They go back 1 year, or they hold on to those devices for a year.
but like the optimization, I feel like is going to generally be Qualcomm leaning, considering the just raw muscle that Qualcomm has. Raw muscle that Qualcomm has in this space, and even if on paper it is like from a specification standpoint it's better, the real world might not necessarily be the case. And a good example of this is actually in the PC world. Um, for the longest time, Intel versus AMD CPUs, right? On paper and in benchmarks, AMD CPUs should be better across the board in every task and every application because of the just the design and the architecture and how things are optimized, right? But the reality is that certain developers and certain applications just run better on Intel because of how they optimize their code to run better on the Intel instruction set, in particular, and that just carried over into future iterations of their program. Even though the AMD CPUs have got the lead now, without question, right? So I want to see just the standard. I know it sucks to have monopolies, but I'm actually okay with Qualcomm being like the de facto standard in this space. I just don't care. Like in the U.S., I'm fine with them just being the de facto standard because they are the best. And if they're not the best anymore because they fall on their laurels, then whoever insert next best is can become the standard. But I want to be like the one across the board. Like I don't see Apple selling their modem to Android phones if it becomes better. It'll just end up being this
Best.
weird dynamic now where it's like if you don't have an iPhone, you're getting a terrible cellular experience.
Man, I will tell you, bro. I'm very aggravated by what you just said.
I
don't
know.
want to. I don't want to see Qualcomm have the stranglehold anymore. I want to see MediaTek. I want to see the Tensor. I want to see all these different companies with their in-house development push Qualcomm to the limit. Like right now, Qualcomm is comfy after they basically dominated the mobile space because of their CDMA technology for like the last 20 years. I'm done with Qualcomm. I'd prefer
know.
not to, I'd prefer not to own a single device with a Qualcomm modem, but I can't. I have to own it because it is the best. But I still need the other guys pushing them, forcing the issue, and trying to compete. Whether they get there or they don't doesn't matter. I mean, I hope they do. But people are telling me like the Dimensity 1000 is a legitimate flagship chipset. And we're also getting word, this is internally from a couple of sources, that the Intel Apple modem is about 90% of the way there.
Yeah, but if we have to pick another competitor to push Qualcomm, I'd rather see Exynos be the one, right? Samsung's going to roll out that part to anyone that has the capacity to do so. Apple's going to be like, no, screw you, it's iPhone
Yeah,
only.
they try so hard.
And
Yeah,
that's
but that's fine, and they can have theirs, right? It's in-house, but like MediaTek becoming a real player in North America would be huge for us. Tensor taking off would be huge for us. Like even the bill of materials would start dropping for some of our devices that we buy, like the Galaxies that are using the Snapdragon chipsets. Dennis, do you realize the shit that you're saying right now? You don't want competition? That's crazy talk.
I realize what I'm saying, but
I mean,
it has a
you
reason.
listen back to this tomorrow and tell me that you meant this.
There is a reason, Sneed. I don't want the modem to be the reason why I don't want to buy your phone. Right?
Okay, hold on. I get where both of you are coming from. I get it. And I'm not usually an advocate for monopolies either, because I do believe in competition. But there's an old saying that goes around: if it ain't broke, don't touch it. Just leave it. And that's how I look at Qualcomm. I look at Qualcomm because they've been proven they've got, like you said, they're in this flow because it works. It does a great
Qualcomm's the
job.
GOAT, but it doesn't have to stay that way.
Yeah, but
It
Sneed,
doesn't.
you're
It doesn't
missing.
have to, but it's if you want reliability, if you want okay. Let me ask you something. If Apple had said, okay, we're gonna replace Qualcomm and we're not gonna put our modems, we're gonna put MediaTek. You think, you think anybody, you think anybody's gonna take that? Do you think anybody's gonna take that phone, knowing? Well, they wouldn't obviously outright say MediaTek. But do you think a person who knows, just like you and Dennis, do you think that, you know, do you think they would take that model?
I mean, it's all going to boil down to the bill of materials for these guys. It's
Sneed.
always going to come down to that.
My
Yeah,
man.
but Sneed. Follow me on one thing real quick, okay? Because you're missing the point that I'm trying to bring up here. There's certain things that are that just by the nature of what they are form de facto monopolies in spaces, right? Like we talked about how in the broadband space, right? You by how the nature of that business is operated, you're only going to have one, maybe two, real fixed hardwired broadband providers to you, right? Not talking about fixed wires, just talking about hardwired, right? Because of the cost, the upfront cost, and everything else that goes along with it, right? In the wireless modem game, there are so many factors that cause that or what led to Qualcomm becoming the de facto default option here in the US among other
There's one
places.
reason.
It's the CDMA and the patents they hold
That's it.
on light, and then people didn't want to pay the royalties, right? So that raised the cost for competitors, right? But then as time went on and their relationships got deepened, right, there was other things that led to them being where they are right now. And what I'm getting at here is if someone does come up and they magically do get better, let's just say Apple makes their own thing, right? And it's just leaps and bounds superior. There's one of two options that ends up being an outcome. Number one is that Qualcomm never gets to ever compete again because Apple will invent some patent that Qualcomm won't be able to get access to because that's just Apple's MO. They don't just share it and license that. They're just like, screw you. And then Qualcomm never gets it, and then Apple can keeps their competitive advantage. Or number two, if you're really feeling lucky and optimistic, and Tim Cook apparently got some great shrooms, they do license it out and they do supply it to other people, in which case you just see Qualcomm's market share shrink, and as they lose the capital, they lose the funding for future R&D to try to leap over the monolith that is Apple. They're a $2 trillion company, man.
That's not going to happen. You just named the one thing that is least likely to happen.
They wouldn't license it, but you do bring up an interesting idea, though. If it is leaps and bounds better, because everybody realizes that, and I wanted to highlight Michael Pepper real quickly. Think about what Apple's airport router did for Wi-Fi. And he goes on and writes, or stability of airdrop and AirPlay compared to the alternatives. Apple knows the protocols, and having their own modems will allow optimization. See, if Apple plays it that way, where it smoothens AirPlay technology, where it smoothens the stability of AirDrop, and because Dennis, my generation is an AirDrop generation. It's not iMessage generation. We use AirDrops to cheat on our tests. We use AirDrop to get our answers. We use AirDrop for everything.
Damn cheaters! I'm sick of you guys.
Hey, listen, I'm just saying. And teachers are getting smart because now they AirDrop the wrong answers to see who accepts which AirDrop. So now they're picking it up. But I'm just gonna say this: I don't mind competition, but I'm always under the impression if it's not broke, don't touch it. But I don't mind if Apple was to do it. I wouldn't mind it because I want to see, because they've had so much time to really work on this. They've got time. We're not looking at this modem till 2025. That's the report from Ming Chi Kuo. 2024, 2025, that's the realistic time frame. So we still, and they got to finish out their agreement with the Qualcomm, the agreement that they have to finish. They could just, buy out the contract, but right now we're not looking until 2024, 2025.
But two problems here. One, you said it, they smooth out AirDrop. When you have Apple products, proprietary protocol, no one else can use it. Number two, it's not like I get an option with iPhones, right? In the Android world, if Pixel wants to go out and do their own modem, good for Pixel. I can tell them to shove off and buy a Samsung phone and still get to enjoy Android. If Apple wants to do it, Dennis is either forced to hold on to the oldest iPhone and pray to God they come to their right mind and go back to Qualcomm, or just stop using iPhones. Like,
wait a minute.
if
So
Apple,
you have an iPhone because they're using Qualcomm?
having them go back to Qualcomm was one of the reasons why I was able to make iPhone my primary again.
Me too. That's
That's
the
true.
only. I have, bro. After
That's
the whole
true.
Intel debacle with what was that? The iPhone 7.
Mm-hmm.
I was done.
Hell, it made
I was
it made
out,
T-Mobile better. It made T-Mobile signal usable more.
Listen,
That's how good
listen. There's
the Switch
two.
was.
Yeah,
there's
but you had to
two-
buy the Verizon model. You couldn't have the T-Mobile model.
There's
'cause
two
that was
things.
Intel.
There's two things
Yeah.
that were big influencers on why iPhone became my primary. Number one is because I wanted one phone to carry around that could hold all my numbers. Dual SIM
Of course.
and eSIM were at the time, and I would argue still, significantly better support on
Yeah.
iPhone than it is on Android.
Yeah.
And number two was the fact that they did go back to Qualcomm. If Apple was still using Intel modems, then
I would
I
have
would
one.
not be using an iPhone.
I wouldn't have one either. You're right. Yeah.
So, like, look, I know people. Listen, I am as anti-big company as it gets. If anyone ever,
But you're
listens to me.
not.
But there is certain things. There are certain things that you just don't mess with. It's the same. Listen, Sneed. In the same way, okay. Hear me out on this real quick, Sneed. Do you want competition when it comes to, screens? Screens. Do you want
I do.
competition when it?
I do.
You do. You care
do.
that much about the back panel?
I do.
Because there's only two companies that make it, and there's not really anyone else. It's LG and Samsung.
Yeah.
And I'm perfectly content.
And why
with
is
that.
LG? Why is LG a viable player today?
Because
know
Google
why?
invested a butt ton of money.
So we need companies to come in and try to be disruptive, and we need companies with legitimate R&D.
So why
And
aren't you buying? So why aren't you buying a device that doesn't have one of those two? Why don't you buy from some Chinese company like TCL or someone that's
TCL
not
doesn't
using
make mobile device
They don't.
displays.
No, but
No,
they
they
make
do, they do.
panels. They make
They
panels.
make the panels.
They make panels.
For which phones?
Primarily TVs and then their own smartphones, but I digress.
TV wise, they're pretty good. I'd give.
But
them credit for
I'm
TV.
saying why in your house right now do you not have a TCL TV?
I do.
I think I do.
I got two of them.
Do you
I got two of
actually?
them.
Yeah, I think
got
the
two
one
of
in the
them.
bedroom is. It's
Oh,
a
okay.
50, I think it's
Okay.
a 50-inch. Yeah, I think we do.
Okay, how about insert some other component? I don't know, RAM.
I
Right.
get your point, bro. I get your point. But I'm gonna buy what's best in the market. But I'm not gonna tell the other companies to go to hell. You can't get my money. I'm gonna buy what is the best.
Yeah, but there's certain official, like, again, I know it's crazy to say, but like, if everyone decides and just opts to use the one thing, unless it's like an open standard like ARM, which, you know, whatever, but like if everyone just decides to go with the one company who has optimized the process, that's how you get the best product, right?
Dennis, I'm not even joking, dog. Like, I would love to see OEMs use multiple chipsets for different models. Like, I want to see like people getting to choose. Like, I know.
Okay.
Like say for example, like MediaTek and the mid-rangers, right? Because they can make a more power efficient chip at a better cost. And thus it would mean that the user who's going to purchase the phone, the consumer, would pay $100 less than a Qualcomm mid-range chipset. Like, I like that. Now it's got to get the same support. It's got to perform as good or better. That's even where I'm looking at this. Like, bro, do you know how important Tensor is to the market? Like, you can hate Google all you want, but it's important to the market that they find success.
I agree. I agree.
So
with
like
you when he's
like your sentiment about the Google phones is warranted. It's your perspective. It's your opinion. It's your take, right? It's you.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to come to agreement on we need them to find success to be competitive. You don't have to buy it. I'll buy it because I like it, right?
Yeah, they're the face of Google. Yes, they need to be successful. I agree. Android.
And yeah, I mean, everybody should be like doing their consumer due diligence and shopping for the best thing for them. And you can't get the best thing for you if you can only choose one thing.
But I need to address a comment real quick because I'm getting personally attacked. Anwar, I am self-aware. You said that that I am a big old lover of AT&T, Qualcomm, and Qualcomm. You're taking a lot of this out of context. A lot of it. I have openly
You go ahead.
I have openly stated that I think that Comcast has terrible billing practices. Me and Steve have agreed on this on numerous occasions. The only thing I'll die on the hill of is when people say that Comcast can't provide good internet service. That's the only thing I disagree on. Everything else, warranted, sure. AT&T, I've talked about how they were terrible when I was in Vegas, when I was there last time. But in Pittsburgh, next thing since sliced bread. Like, they're just god tier, okay? And then Qualcomm, no one with a straight face can tell me right now that Qualcomm doesn't make the best modems for wireless. Now, if we're talking about Wi-Fi, Intel is... I don't know if you guys saw, by the way. We should probably talk about this, but Intel has been popping with the Wi-Fi.
Yeah. That's what another credit is credit due. I've seen those Wi-Fi speeds. I've seen what Intel's doing, and got to give them credit in that respect because, a lot of people actually sleep a lot on Intel. A lot of people don't appreciate what they bring. They'd always look at them as like, oh, they just make like their version of hardware, but they make some really good hardware.
No, but
Intel gets a bad rap, I think, because AMD just does things better than them, right?
NVIDIA's also got the graphics end. Yeah. But Intel, at one point, not the Mac end, but at one point they were dominating in the CPU game, and they were like, I remember at one point, like there was a time when Macs, like everybody made sure they were up to date on what KB leg, Coffee leg, what version of the Intel processor was in the MacBook because they knew what a difference it made.
What are you using? Now, what's your hardware that you use for all your stuff?
Well, obviously M1 Pro for video content editing. I actually got to be honest, I miss using Windows. I'm not going to lie to you guys.
Come back.
I really miss using... I really do. I miss Windows. Because of two things. I miss it because even though the iPhone and the Macs and all that work nice together, I just love being able to use a Windows computer and do my business, do my work without having to interfere and mix. Also because Microsoft Word and others worked better on Windows anyway. But I think the main reason I miss Windows is because of the customization. Being able to upgrade my own hardware, being able to play games online because you can't do that on a Mac. Or you can, but it's not the best. I also miss having NVIDIA as a graphics card. I actually really miss NVIDIA.
I was going to say, Dennis, what are you using? Is that the stuff you're on?
Yeah, I just want to say real quick, Intel actually, just so we're all aware, very competitive right now in the CPU space in general. Like Raptor, like really good. In fact, it was so good of a release, I almost regretted my 7950X purchase. Almost. Wow. But I'm rocking an AMD 7950X, which is 16 cores, 32 threads of just raw power. It'll destroy the M1 processor. And then I got a 3080 Ti, 64 gigs of DDR5 memory, and like a bazillion terabytes of nothing but NVMe solid state storage. So I'm rocking a beast. And you should come back to Windows. It's fun over here, Technoid. It's great.
I'll say this. I will come back to Windows. I will come back one day. But until then, They just gonna have to convince me on a
If you
good gaming PC.
if you got 2,500, I can build you a gaming PC that's so freaking good that it'll literally destroy your M1 when it comes to video editing.
I would probably most likely like when the next probably when because I'm already gonna switch over to PC for gaming purposes, mostly gaming. I'm probably gonna switch over probably after the PS6 comes out because I might not buy the PS6. I like
Well,
the
dude,
PS5.
right now is a good time to actually get in because CPU. So here's the thing, okay? If you were gonna do an AMD build in particular, since Ryzen came out with their next gen 7000 series, which by the way they did a price cut on like a $200 price drop already on it. Last gen Ryzen chips are even cheaper. In particular, the 5800 X3D, I believe, is the model. It's actually still got like gaming leadership. Like, if you just care about gaming, it's got like IPC like leadership as far as frames per second goes, and it's like you can snag one for something like $250. It's 8 cores, 16 threads, and because it's also on the older platform, the motherboards are also super cheap. You can snag one for like $200. That's fully fleshed out. That's basically half your bill right there, so $450. And then because it's on an older platform, it's using DDR4 memory, which is also super cheap. You can get like 16 gigs of that. Really good stuff for like 150. And then you got plenty of room now for a beast of a GPU, which AMD's new GPUs that came out are actually looking pretty good. Obviously, there's the 4000 series cards, which you can't find anything in the high end side, but you can definitely snag a really quality good AMD GPU. Well, you said you want an NVIDIA, so in that case, if you want an NVIDIA GPU, pick up like a freaking 4080, dude, and you're gaming at like freaking 1440p, like
That's
240
all I
FPS
need.
all
That's
day.
all I need. I don't even need 4K. I just want me a good 1080, 1440. That's all for me. I will one day consider it. I will one day go back. But
I mean,
until
Steed
then,
has a PC that I have somewhere sitting for him in PC Part Picker I shared with him. He's rocking a 4-core CPU right now.
What'd you price me at, Dennis? What were we looking at? How much?
I think
How
we
much
said
was that build?
I think we said what, 7 or 800.
That's a pretty damn good price.
that's a good price.
And then
Yeah.
I think we had you down to 7 or 800, and that was without too many compromises. And I said if you really want to go fully decked out, I think it was like 1500 for fully decked out.
There were 2 upgrades that would have got us up to like 11 or 1300.
Yeah.
And then there was like one additional thing. You were like, well, since we're doing that, we might as well do this. And I think you got it up to 15. But it would have been a powerhouse for gaming.
A powerhouse not just for gaming, but your
And the
content
editing
creation.
so like I would be rendering all types of 4K content, no
problem.
issues, no speed concerns,
I'll
no
tell you what.
struggling.
When the time comes, I'm gonna make a year challenge, custom PC for 1 year. Video editing, video content creation, gaming, everything.
How's your workflow on the Mac side?
It's good.
Yeah.
I don't really do a lot of heavy multitasking. I'm more of just the Final Cut Pro guy. And well, now that I'll be going back for masters, I'll have to be back in with Stata, which is a software that does the data analytics. But yeah, lest we digress on that one.
Okay, I have a thing that that's a disappointment for the year, hands down.
What's
The
it?
the 600 pin connector that you have to use the NVIDIA GPUs that were catching GPUs on fire.
Oh, shish.
That was
I
a
didn't
pretty
hear
big
about that.
letdown.
I didn't even hear about that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
me
it's a
neither.
12 pin connector that can support up to 600 watts of power, and like basically like TLDR with how users were like plugging it in and like and how you bend it and stuff. Like you have to be very careful how you bend it, otherwise it'll just like catch on fire.
I can see that 600 watts. You bend it one way, boom.
Well, no, that's not normal. Most of the time, like if you look at my PC, dude, its cable managed things are bent. It's actually normal to bend your cables and like cable manage them and stuff. But this
Oh
one,
yeah. Well,
this one wasn't designed very well.
what can you do about that, Dan? Wait, listen. I would love to keep this flow going, but it is 10:21 at night. I've got an early morning shift at 8 a.m. in the morning. So, I'm going to have to stop this convo, but we will pick this up on Friday night, 9 p.m., for the final episode of the Technoid Live. That'll be the final episode of 2022. And we'll talk more. We'll talk about some things we're looking forward to in the new year, talk about some things we want to see, and we'll keep this conversation going with NVIDIA because I want to know more about it. But anyway, before we end the show, I want to take this moment to appreciate both men coming in tonight. We got Dennis returning It's great to have you on. We got Sneed. Always a pleasure.
Thanks,
And
man.
most importantly, we got everybody watching live. And I really, really appreciate everyone that was supporting. I appreciate the super chat. Thank you guys so much.
Thank
I will
you.
see you all for part 3. Dennis, thank you so much. Thank you, Gene, for the last minute super chat, $2. Thank you very
Kobe
much.
Bryant hit it at the buzzer.
At the
Yeah.
buzzer. All right, guys, we're going to end the show. Have a great night, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow. There will be an episode of Technoid out. Thank you all for watching. Have a great night. And